This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Hello, I'm here during the lunch rush with Janice, who owns her own food truck.
Best cheesesteaks in town.
Janice traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for her food truck business. We're here where she needs us most.
They sure are.
We make it so easy for her to save, with customised coverage that grows with her business. Sorry, I just get so emotional talking about saving folks money.
Not this onion I'm chopping?
It's just so beautiful. Oh yeah, no, it's the onion.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Welcome to Modern Mom Probs, where we're trying to solve the world's modern mom problems. And if we can't do that, at least we're having fun talking about them. I'm Tara Clark. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs. I'm your girl, Tara, and today I'm joined by my girl, Libby Ward. I am so excited to have Libby back on the show. This will be her third time on the show. First time was about, I think it was about mom rage and then breaking generational cycles. And now today we're going to be talking about her new book, Honest Motherhood. So if I were to say, what is the modern mom problem we're talking about today? I would say radical honesty. And I read Libby's book cover to cover in just a few days. I read it voraciously. I couldn't put it down. It is part memoir and it's a manifesto, if you will. It has so many great takeaways. It's just a refreshing read. And so I'm super excited to share our conversation with you. So without further ado, welcome, Libby Ward.
Thank you so much. We're doing this again. This is number 3, and you're in good company because you were tied with Tamron Hall for most appearances on the podcast. No way. Or like this.
Oh. Yeah. You are in good company. The first time I think you came on talking about breaking generational cycles. Second time was mom rage. Third time is honest motherhood. So if for people who haven't listened to those episodes, go back and listen to those other previous episodes with Libby. And here we are. So if people haven't listened and if they're not familiar, give us a little bit of a background about yourself.
This is always the hardest question. How to describe oneself. Background. My name is Libby Ward. For a long time, I had the handle Diary of an Honest Mom, and that is how the internet came to know me. But before that, I was just and am still just a regular mom from small town Canada. I'm married to a police officer. I have 2 kids who are now 9 and 11, practically geriatric. But when I started sharing 6 years ago, they were, well, whatever 6 years younger than that is. And I was just coming out of a very dark time and then still kind of in a dark time. And so what do you need to know about me? I say the things out loud that other people don't really seem to say. And apparently I've become known for that. So I wrote a book called Honest Motherhood on losing my mind and finding myself. And it is about exactly what the subtitle says. And I'm looking forward to talking about it because I want to help moms feel less alone and able to be a whole person at the same time as being a mom.
Yeah, that's that. You summed that up. Yeah, that was it. All right. Thanks for coming. No, I'm just kidding. But like, at what point did you say to yourself, this needs to be a book? I have to write this down so that I could share this with the world.
Call it the trifecta that made it become a book. So it started, I would say if we were to rewind back to when I was in the throes of early motherhood, toddlerhood, babies, everyone needing me all the time for every single little thing, being surrounded by moms who seemed to just be able to do it all with a smile. And I felt terrible about myself for not being able to keep up with it all. And I finally had my first moment of real honesty with myself shortly after my second-born came along, who was much harder than the firstborn. I don't know if I'm going to tell that story, but essentially I had a breakdown. I went to therapy. The therapist was like, yeah, you are carrying a lot. I'd gaslit myself into thinking like there was something wrong with me. And she's like, oh, no, you're carrying a lot. And so I worked on my postpartum depression, which then turned into a spool of yarn that, oh, you're not just going to therapy for your postpartum depression. You actually have a lot of trauma from your childhood. And so I started doing a lot of like inner work and healing and realizing why I was someone who tried to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders and couldn't ask for help and overfunctioned and did all the things. And so fast forward a few years, I'm starting to finally realize that I'm a whole person, feeling a little less guilty for taking care of myself, trying to make some changes in my life. And then so that's the first thing. The first part of the trifecta is I did some inner work on myself. The second part of the trifecta is that I went back to school. I went to university when my kids were 3 and 5, something like that. And I had never finished university out of high school. I grew up in underprivileged circumstances. My parents didn't finish high school. They didn't have an education, have professions. And so I'd never really done that. And I had lived a pretty sheltered experience up until that point, surrounded by, rural, church community with a more narrow worldview. I didn't have a lot of experience with different ways of looking at things. And so I went back to school to get my sociology degree. And the only class they had available on the evening that I could go back to school was the sociology of sex and gender. And I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this one. And so that was the first time in that class that I had heard the words default parent or mental load or invisible labor, and realized that I wasn't the only one who felt like they had to carry everything alone and couldn't figure out why they were burnt out, and really finally started to connect the dots to why I wasn't well, and that it wasn't just a me problem, like it was a larger social problem. So that's the second part of the trifecta. I was fast forwarding through this story as much as
no, it's fine. I got time.
And so my third trifecta was that, so I went back to school, and then in 2020, so this is maybe a year or so later, I was working as an educational assistant. So I supported children with special needs in the school system, and I was working in a grade 7 classroom, and there was these girls doing this weird dance in the corner during one of the breaks. And I was like, what are they doing? And so I asked them, and they were like, oh, it's a TikTok. And they were doing this weird thing with their arms. I was like, what is TikTok? Is it a clock dance? Like, it looks like you're looking like you're just like clock hands. They were like, oh no, it's an app where you like share videos and, post dances and do trends. And I was like, that's dangerous. Like, don't go on the internet. It's bad. And then I joined TikTok a few weeks later when the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh, we'll see what this is about. And so, very long story short, once I started making content about motherhood, I realized I really wasn't alone. Like, I thought, oh, this is my corner of the internet where no one from my real life is going to find me. And I can finally be honest about the things that I've been realizing about myself in my own healing journey, or in what I'm learning in school, or, just different parts of motherhood that people didn't talk about. And in my personal life, I didn't feel comfortable talking about. I thought TikTok is my little corner of the internet. And so
no one's going to find out.
No one's going to find me. It'll be fine. And that was the third piece that cemented it for me, that, wow, not only are you not alone, and these people sharing with you are helping you realize that, but you're helping them realize that. And people are telling you that you're changing their lives. But it was like I had the primary data at my fingertips. Like, my therapist was the first one to help me realize, oh, maybe you are a whole person who deserves to have needs met, and you shouldn't just self-sacrifice and self-deny. And then school was like, hey, this is a social problem, and the world does not treat men and women equally. And then the millions of people on TikTok who were responding to my videos were like, oh my gosh, me too. And I thought, something needs to change. And so what triggered me wanting to write this book was that, as much as I love making content online and connecting with women and moms online, the conversations are short and they lack nuance. And, the algorithms are set up to be promoting what's viral or what's extreme or what gets a reaction. And while I love that I grew a platform online, I really had this deep, deep desire to change the way that we perceive ourselves and mothers in the world, because there's so many women out there, and myself included, for so long, that truly we try to do it all, and then we blame ourselves for having a hard time. And I wanted to help moms feel less alone. And I wanted to help them realize there are things you can do to enhance your circumstances. And a book felt like the perfect way to do that, because I think there's only so much we can do online. And so it was a trifecta that was like, no, you're going to write a book. We're going to do this. And that, like deciding to get pregnant, was a choice that I did not comprehend all that it entailed.
Duly noted. No, that makes so much sense. That's why I like podcasting so much, because we could have a conversation for a half an hour, for an hour. And like, we're talking about those nuances. We're talking about things in a more robust way than we can do in 15 seconds, 30 seconds, even a minute, where you're doing it to feed the algorithm, versus you and I having an honest conversation about motherhood. And I do it, week after week, and you do it so beautifully in your book. I absolutely devoured your book. I read it back in, I think it was January, February. I mean, I just devoured it because there were so many parts of it where I was nodding along, whether it was like similar things in our upbringing, similar feelings that we had in motherhood. And it was just like so honest, for lack of a better term, and so beautifully written. But it's just wait, I just want to go back to a thought that I was having as you were like sharing the story about the trifecta. When I was in college, I took several sociology classes because I love sociology. I was a communication and a business major, but I love sociology. And I took a sociology class, I think, about feminism, and then also sociology of the family. For me, as a 20-year-old sitting in those classes, I feel like it was very different than what it must have been like as a single. I was dating my husband, but I was not married, did not have kids. But like for a single college woman to like listen to that, the philosophy behind that, versus being a married mother of one or two children at the time, it takes on a very different meaning. You are living the kind of stuff that they're talking about there.
Yeah, it wasn't just something in a storybook or something that happens to other people. And I felt that so viscerally in that class. So, my kids are 3 and 5 at the time. I'm the default parent. I'm doing everything at home. I've given up other career prospects so I can focus more on the kids, because my husband's job was full on. Felt like a shell of myself. I was just trying to figure out if I can be a whole person at the same time. And, I'm in class and I'm getting texts about, do we have paper towels? Or like, when do the kids need to be dropped off here or there? And I'm just, I can't focus on anything for any period of time because somebody always needs me. And so I'm surrounded by these 20-year-olds, and I hear the professor at the front talking about how, gender roles are just, passed down through culture and society, and what's expected of women and men without anything ever really being said. And then the detrimental effects it has on their physical health, on their mental health, on their social relations, on so many areas of their life. And, I see the 20-year-olds around me, like I'm taking notes or talking over her or just whatever. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm on fire, right? I'm like, there's like this fire under my butt. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yes, it's exactly this. That's exactly what it is. And gosh, I just remember being like all these like light bulbs all going off and like connecting to one another and all these different things. And, previous to that, like I said, I was in a pretty, I don't want to say narrow-minded church community, but it was a pretty like small town vibe and, a specific way of looking at things. And so when I had heard the words feminism before, it was through the lens of like rage-filled women burning their bras unnecessarily, and I had always been someone who had a heart for social justice and had this deep desire for equality and for people to be treated well and for everyone to be seen as equals and treated as equals. But I hadn't really entered the world of feminism up until that point. And being in that class was really this first time that I was like, well, then I guess I'm a feminist. Like, I guess that's what I am. It was really interesting just seeing even how that word over the years has been used or made like painted. We have these pictures painted of like what a feminist is. And it's almost become like a dirty word for certain people. And it's like, what? Like, how can you, aren't we all? I just assumed we all would think that all people were equal and that we should given an equal opportunity to be well. And like, just because women have the opportunity to own their own homes and get a job, if you can't function as a whole human being because of the lack of childcare or the lack of your partner's ability to realize he should maybe be an active parent at the dinner table, then what good is it if you can't eat a hot meal, if you can't catch a break, if you can't have any moment of the day for yourself? What use is it that you're allowed to work? Right? Yeah. Anyway, so that's my little rant about feminism. And it was one of those things where I don't know if you've had this ever in life where you kind of have this light bulb moment and all of a sudden you wake up, right? It is that, we joke about people being woke, but you have this moment where you wake up and you're like, wait a second, there's all these things that are really affecting this group of people, are affecting me, are affecting mothers, and because of that, affecting their children, whatever it is. You have this light bulb moment. And then you look around at everyone who isn't having that experience like you at the exact same time. And you're like, how are we not all yelling about this? Like, this is a very big deal and it affects everybody. And I became that person. And I probably became very annoying to my friends and family who were used to this like nice Libby who's like, yeah, I'll host Christmas, I'll host Easter, I'll do Thanksgiving, I'll cook everything. No, don't worry, you don't need to bring anything. I'll just be filled with resentment and rage and I'll do all the things for everybody and then simultaneously be frustrated that you guys aren't doing anything, but then not ask for help, but then feel sad that I'm alone. And I'm going to do all of these things and I will just try to keep everybody happy and self-sacrifice and martyr myself and just be quiet and just say what everybody wants me to say and like stay in this little box. And then all of a sudden, probably overnight, it was like, what happened to Libby? How is she a raging feminist now on the internet? What happened?
Let me ask you something. Who creates the comfort that makes a house feel like a home? It's mom. It's usually mom. In this Mother's Day, I've been thinking, what would it feel like to actually give her comfort back? And that's why I love Cozy Earth. Their robes and slippers are truly next level. They're soft, breathable, and thoughtfully designed pieces that feel like a deep exhale at the end of a long day. I love how intentional everything feels, from the cozy fabrics to the little details like the fit and the pockets. It's not just loungewear, it's self-care. I'm actually wearing my Cozy Earth joggers right now. So this Mother's Day, let's give her something that actually gives back. Head to cozyearth.com and use my code MODERN for 20% off. And if you see the post-purchase survey, make sure that you mention that you heard it right here first on Modern Mom Probs. Because home starts with mom.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay, no insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Libby, I know and love. No, but you know what's interesting? What you were saying about a moment that sort of like the light bulb went off. When you started talking about the mental load of motherhood as prolifically as you did and as frequently as you did, it was, well, that was one thing, but also with the cycle breaking, I think it was sort of the two topics, like the cycle breaking and the mental load of motherhood. When you were having those conversations online, it was finally putting words to feelings that people were having that they didn't know necessarily what to call it.
Right.
And I think that's a really big thing is having the phrases, having the turn of phrase to say, that's how I feel. You know, even this, I love how this turned into like a whole like college course on feminism now, but with the, like Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique, right? And in that book, she's talking about that feeling that women were feeling that she didn't know what else to call it, right? So, or they didn't know what else to call it. But when you put terms to a feeling, it is very powerful.
It is. I mean, it can change your life. Like it can change everything to go from I'm having all these feelings. Not only do I not have the words or the energy to describe it, and I feel gaslit whenever I try to explain it because I can't really put words to it, but it's this thing here. Like that is so exhausting and defeating, and you end up convincing yourself that you're crazy. And so not only like when we put words to it, it doesn't just help us feel less alone because we know that other people have the experience. It literally changes our whole perception of the thing and ourselves and allows us to change. Like, I'm not saying this very well, but it actually, like, it changes everything. Because then you can say to your partner, hey, I am struggling with the mental load, like the mental load of planning and packing for this vacation, or for keeping track of my child's milestones, our children's milestones, or, you know, planning dinner every day. It means that my brain never has a chance to shut off. You have words that you can actually describe it with rather than just like talking in circles about things. And it is so powerful. And I'm so grateful that we now have the language to talk about these things, because I mean, I know when I became a mom, gosh, nearly 12 years ago, those words were not being used. Nobody talked about it. Like, not only did nobody even talk about how exhausting it was to do and think about all the things, but we definitely didn't have the actual terms and language to name it. So it's a very gaslighting experience to feel like there is this thing that's happening and I can't even describe it. And yeah, it's powerful to have those words.
It really is. And I think that's where a lot of resentment builds up, is when you're feeling this feeling. You don't necessarily know how to have a almost like a relief valve, if you will. I'm sort of like seeing in my mind like the pressure of a pipe, and it needs a relief valve to be able to like blow off the pressure of that. But when we have words and when we have phrases to be able to do that, we're able to sort of like blow off some of that relief. And then also at the same time, then we're able to hand things off to our partners if we have partners too. Right. So important. And that's one of the things I'm grateful about your platform, many people's platform, Instagram in general. You know, 13 years ago when my son was born, we simply were not having these conversations online. And to get to a point where we are now, where we could speak about these things freely, and people are saying, yes, me too, I'm not alone. Like, thank you for all of this. And it's not just the mental load. I mean, there's so many conversations that we have: pregnancy, loss, infertility, postpartum depression. I mean, so many conversations that we have. And so that leads me to my next question for you, is about radical honesty. In your book, you talk about radical honesty. What does that mean to you?
So I will say that when I first started sharing online, the way I thought about honesty, honest motherhood, being honest about motherhood, was more so externally. I felt so alone in my experiences that it was very empowering to share them openly and to realize that I wasn't alone, and to help other moms know that, like, I was having those experiences and they weren't alone. And it is very powerful to do that. But in my journey, and I share about this in the book, it really was the radical honesty that I had to develop the practice of with myself that changed everything for me. I came to a point in my motherhood where I was carrying everything, could not handle it anymore, didn't know what to do with it, and was just full of rage all the time. That was mostly an internal rage. And I knew that when I entered motherhood that I didn't want to be the type of mother that I grew up with. I didn't want to be parenting through fear. I didn't want my kids to be afraid of me. I wanted to create a safe, nurturing environment, and I wanted to be my kids' safe place, their secure, safe place. I didn't have the words for cycle breaking. I'd never heard the term gentle parenting, but I knew that I wanted to parent differently. But when the load of everything became so big and I was still trying to do everything on my own, I just became filled with this internal rage that I did not know what to do with. And I had been in therapy for a few years, but I just couldn't regulate. Like, my kids needing me constantly just like triggered this feeling inside me that became almost impossible to stifle. And I still tried to spin all the plates and do all the things for all the people. There was one morning when I had to get the kids out the door to daycare and school by myself because my husband had been working all night and he was sleeping. And so my daughter woke up and she'd wet the bed or something like that. And so I had to clean that up. And then my son woke up and I picked him up and was trying to figure out what he wanted. He was nearly 3 and he still couldn't speak. He was in speech therapy a lot, and I carried the mental load of all of that as well. And I was teaching him sign language, and we were trying to figure out ways to communicate. And so you take a 3-year-old who already, all 3-year-olds have a lot of emotions that they have a hard time regulating, but then one who can't tell you what they want. And it was just constant dysregulation. And so I couldn't figure out what he wanted. He ended up slapping me in the face. And I was very proud of myself for not slapping him in the face, but I can feel the rage bubbling, those mornings where you're like, oh my goodness, can something go right? Can you please eat your breakfast? Can you please get dressed? Can we please get out the door? And it's just like ultimate chaos. And I can feel it all building. I was working part-time. I was in school part-time. I was the default parent at home. I was taking care of my mom. I was still in a pretty heavy codependent enmeshed relationship and just trying to do everything for everybody. And so they end up not eating their breakfast. I shove a granola bar into both of their hands. I'm like, let's just get going. And so we get in the car. I realize I have to call to get a babysitter for them after school because ours canceled or something like that. So I say, just give me a minute and I just need some quiet for a phone call. And so of course I dial the number and nobody is quiet. And my son starts screaming and I don't know what he wants because I can't understand what he's saying. And my daughter starts yelling and kicking my seat. It's like, mommy, mommy, mommy. And it just is like growing and building. And I can like feel the heat just like rushing to my face and I was just so rage fueled that it was one of those moments where the lid just popped off and I slammed on the brake and I turned around and I screamed in their faces, told them to shut up. I told them that they never listen, that they only care about themselves, that I was trying my best, all the things that, we can say inside of our heads and try so hard not to say out loud. They all just came out. And that was one of the biggest moments that stands out for me. That was like a pivotal moment because I looked at them and I saw the fear on their face. They were absolutely terrified of me. And I had spent all those years up until then doing everything I could to be someone who didn't rule by fear and to be someone who nurtured my kids and kept them safe from their fears. And to see them looking at me as the source of their fear, it just like broke my heart, and I just filled with shame. And I turned around and my son was holding up a granola bar that wasn't open. And and then he signed the words open. And I realized he just wanted me to open his granola bar. And his sister just wanted to help him get that message to me. And I felt awful. I just felt awful about myself. And, and people might say oh, I can't believe you made it years without yelling at your kids. And the thing is, it's not a competition. I was still walking around the world just filled with internal rage and disassociated and disconnected and not present and just in autopilot mode for so long. And it was just, that was the moment that I just viscerally remember the look on their faces and feeling such shame for becoming everything I said that I wouldn't become. And that was the moment that I decided something needed to change. Something bigger needed to change. I started doing deeper work with healing my trauma and learning how to regulate and realizing that I'd never been taught those skills. And also realizing that my childhood experiences made me someone who never asked myself what I wanted, what I needed, if my needs were being met, if I could handle what I was saying yes to, what my capacity was, what my priorities were. I'd spent my whole life, and especially motherhood, looking to everybody else for what the right thing to do was and trying to emulate what all these quote unquote perfect moms were doing. I was still trying to wear the matching outfits every Sunday. I was still trying to make the perfect meals. I was still trying to save my mom from herself. I was still trying to prioritize my husband's sleep and my husband's meals and my husband's everything because he was the one that earned the majority of our income. Still trying to put my kids' needs for speech therapy and other things they needed above my own. And I hadn't actually in my life spent time stopping and asking myself if I should be doing all those things, why I was doing those things, if those things were realistic. And over time and through my healing journey, I realized that that is really what I needed to do. And so that was really the beginning of me being radically honest with myself and building this practice of, on a big scale, looking at my life saying, what do I need? What do my kids need? What are my priorities? And what is my capacity? Should I be caring for both of my disabled parents? Should I be expecting myself to cook whole food meals every night of the week and take my child to multiple things of therapy? I don't have the support system I thought I would have. Should I be trying to clean my house to the same standards as my friends? Should I be doing all of these things like based on my actual real life, not what everybody says I should do or whatever capacity I think I should have, based on my actual capacity and my actual support? Is this realistic? And if it's not, what do I need to let go of? What do I need to radically assess and say, this is really unrealistic and I need to change this big thing? And so that was sort of at a bigger scale. And really what I share about in the book is the daily and sometimes moment to moment practice of radical honesty that's actually transformed my motherhood, which is you wake up each day and you assess with radical honesty, like, how did I sleep? What are my kids' needs? If I have a neurodivergent child and I am a neurodivergent adult, should I be expecting the same thing I would expect if that were not the case? Be radically honest about your finances. Should you be buying the products that your neighbor is buying just because that's what all the cool moms are getting right now? Or can you just afford something different? And it was when I started to practice radical honesty with myself that everything changed, because I was looking inward at what are my priorities? What are my needs? What are my past traumas? What are my goals and my kids' needs? Not what does the whole world say I should do? Because if we look at the whole world, you'll never win. There's so many conflicting standards, right? Like you've got to, do this one thing, but then you have to do this other thing that's completely conflicting with it. You should breastfeed your baby, but you also should go back to work, but you shouldn't go back to work because you should there's all these conflicting things. But everybody has a completely different life and a past history and, different chronic illnesses or mental health or kids' needs. And it was so hard for me in early motherhood, not just because it's hard for everyone and kids are exhausting. And if you want to do a good job, you have to put effort in, but because my circumstances were different. I didn't have the support system I needed. I didn't have a husband who was home every night of the week or on the weekends. I had a highly sensitive child. And so I had to adjust my expectations of myself based on my actual reality and not what everybody else says. And then this other piece I just want to mention is that, when we talk about regulation and, snapping at our kids or overstimulation or rage or, that moment where you just are going to lose it on your kids, people will always ask oh, well, how do you stop doing that? It's number one, on a large scale, you need to be radically honest with yourself. But are you carrying too much? And what can you let go of or hand off? But also in the actual moment, it's being honest about, am I reacting to what's actually happening? Or am I reacting to something that happened in the past or my own shame or my feeling of not being in control? If your kid is on the floor and they are screaming because they don't want to put their shoes on and you're going to be late for work and they're going to be late for daycare and someone's going to be mad at you because you're late and, you haven't got your kid to do anything they've asked you to do for the last week and a half and you're feeling out of control. Are you actually that angry because they won't put their shoes on? Or are you angry because for your whole childhood, you weren't in control of things, or because there's something about that moment that's triggering you, or you're worried about being ashamed? And is there actually a lion chasing you? Is the house on fire, or does it just feel like it's on fire? And so I use the term radical honesty broadly because it's I genuinely feel and know that telling ourselves the truth is what can change everything. Telling yourself the truth about what is happening in that moment, what you're feeling about that moment, what you're expecting of yourself, can change how you act and react and can change your whole experience of motherhood. And so that's my long answer to what radical honesty is. It's important to be honest with each other, but it's most important to be able to tell yourself the truth.
Let me ask you something. Who creates the comfort that makes a house feel like a home? It's mom. It's usually mom. In this Mother's Day, I've been thinking, what would it feel like to actually give her comfort back? And that's why I love Cozy Earth. Their robes and slippers are truly next level. They're soft, breathable, and thoughtfully designed pieces that feel like a deep exhale at the end of a long day. I love how intentional everything feels, from the cozy fabrics to the little details like the fit and the pockets. It's not just loungewear, it's self-care. I'm actually wearing my Cozy Earth joggers right now. So this Mother's Day, Let's give her something that actually gives back. Head to cozyearth.com and use my code MODERN for 20% off. And if you see the post-purchase survey, make sure that you mention that you heard it right here first on Modern Mom Probs. Because home starts with mom.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay, no insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Yeah, beautifully said. So beautifully said. I have a similar-ish story. Well, two things I'll say. One, the granola bar story is my favorite story in your entire book. I'm so happy that you shared that one now. I'm happy that you chose to share that one because I think it is so relatable. There are so many times when you have toddlers who are trying to communicate and they're struggling, and not everyone obviously has the same situation in your particular situation, but for us, my son also was in speech therapy. And so we had some challenges with communication and especially with dysregulation. And so it was just so relatable. So thank you for sharing that story. Similar story to yours. When my son was 3 years old, he had a squishy tomato. It was a toy. It was like a stress ball, sort of, right? And he was squishing it, and he squished it too hard and it exploded everywhere. And I absolutely turned around and screamed at him. And it was so uncharacteristic. And as the words were coming out of my mouth, I knew that it wasn't even me. It was like generations back coming through me on that. And I yelled at him, and then he started to cry, and then I felt bad. And it was just one of those like shame and guilt all tied up together. And I said to myself at that exact moment that I'll never do that again. And it was true. And I haven't, knock on wood, still to this point, really yelled or turned around and got upset in that same way, because it was such an awakening for me that wasn't me as Tara. That was, like I said, generations coming through me. And it was one of those things where you were just like total fight or flight, and you just did it at that exact moment. The adrenaline was high, your cortisol is just racing, and you do that. And it's taken me many years of doing this as a job, this meaning working in the parenting space, speaking with professionals, therapists, and all of that kind of stuff, to practice that type of not only radical honesty, but the practice of regulation. Like for me, people say like, Tara, you're so calm, cool, and collected. And I am that regulated in my parenting and in my relationship with my husband and just in life. But that comes with practice. You don't just wake up one day, especially when you were not parented like that and you did not see that as modeling. You have to choose. It's a choice. I mean, for me personally, I can only speak for myself ever. For me, I choose that behavior. I choose that modeling. I choose that regulation. And it happens a little bit over time.
Yeah, it's a constant choice, though. I think that I thought when I entered motherhood, or even when I started to do this work, that it would be a single choice. Like, I am going to choose to not be this type of mom. And the truth is that while it is a choice, it's not a one-time choice. It is an over and over and over and over again choice that you have to make, and you have to do it with practice. And, for anyone who's listening who didn't have that modeled, and not only didn't have it modeled, but actually had the opposite modeled, whereby you are someone who is more easily dysregulated. You can't rewire your pathways overnight. You can't rewire them in a week or a month or 2 years. And I don't say that to make it seem like it's, daunting. I know cycle breakers can feel like, oh my goodness, like, is the work ever going to end? And it can be overwhelming. But I say that to just remind you that you can't expect yourself to just change overnight. And yes, you can choose it, but you have to keep choosing it, and you don't have to get it perfect every time. It's literally just practicing it. Different tools work for different people to be regulated. For me, I am such a sensory person that I would be like in the moment. And at first, like the biggest step for me would just be to close my eyes and plug my ears and turn around. Like I needed to not see my child, whatever extreme emotions were happening, and I needed to not hear it, because that like immediate like sensory stuff would just set me off so much. And now I'm at a place where I don't need to close my eyes and plug my ears and turn around, but that was what I needed to practice at first. And then I would layer on breathing, and then I would layer on something else, and then I could start to take away, okay, well, you don't need to close your eyes, or like whatever it is. So it's practicing like what is going to work to help you get to a place where you can feel more calm. Because when you feel more calm, you can also access logic easier. It's hard to make a choice when you're dysregulated, right? Like, I don't know all the sciencey words behind it, but basically when your cortisol spikes, you can't access the part of your brain that makes logical decisions. Like you are just acting out of fight or flight. So the number one goal is figure out how to calm the flip down. And then you'll be better at like making a conscious choice. But it's hard. You have to keep choosing it, giving yourself grace when you make mistakes. And like you said, it's practicing it. It's not just like a one time, I'm going to be better. It's like over and over and over again. And it's tough, and it's important. It's important work. And I know, like Tara, we've talked about this before. It's like, it's also rewarding work.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that like, it's the hardest thing. But then when you know that you're providing your kids with a safe environment where they feel safe to have feelings and be themselves, like what else is more important and valuable and necessary than that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is very valuable work. It is not easy, but it is absolutely worth it. So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and I'm really curious to see what you're going to say because it runs the gamut. But here we go. What do you think is the biggest modern mom problem right now?
The biggest modern mom problem right now is that there is so much information coming at us at a velocity that we cannot even process or comprehend or contextualize, that it overloads us and makes us trust ourselves even less. And it just makes motherhood even harder when we're already trying to figure out what is the best way to go about things. And can I trust myself to have experts and influencers and doctors and information with contradictory statements and inflammatory information and social media, everything. It's a lot. It's a unique problem that modern mothers have, that previous generations had other problems that we didn't have. The amount of information we get is so exhausting to filter through, and it makes everything harder. And I would just encourage people to listen to yourself more, tell yourself the truth more, because it's hard, and you know more than you give yourself credit for.
It's really sound advice. That is true. We often are second guessing ourselves because we see this one doing one thing and we read that book and it's contradicting the other book that we recently just read, or this influencer said one thing. And so it can be a lot, and it is unique to our current generation in parenting. So that's a great answer. I appreciate that one. So if you could sum up your book in one sentence, how would you describe Honest Motherhood?
This is always the hardest question for me to answer. Honest Motherhood is my personal story of losing my mind and struggling in motherhood, and the honest, nuanced, complex ways that I found myself and found my way to being a good parent and a whole human person with needs at the same time.
Brava.
My one sentence. I wanted to keep talking, but I stopped.
That was so good. No, because you like actually answered the question in a sentence. I was like, dang, that is so hard to do.
It's hard. Libby Ward with one sentence. I think I deserve an award for that, actually.
You totally do. When I see you, I'm going to give you something. Hold me to it because you deserve something for that 100%. Libby, where can everyone buy this book? Where can we follow you online? Where can we learn more about it? Tell us all the things.
Okay, you can find me online at Libby Ward is my handle now. On TikTok, it's Libby Ward Official. But if you Google my name, you'll find me on my website, all the places. And you can get the book pretty much anywhere that you get books, Amazon, Audible. I'm an audiobook listener. I know a lot of my followers are audiobook listeners. Indigo in Canada, Barnes & Noble, all the regular places you get books, you can get my book. And I hope you get it. And I hope you tell your friends about it because I think a lot of moms need this message.
They absolutely do. I read it cover to cover. I absolutely devoured it. I can say that is one of my favorite memoirs. I read a lot of books for this job because I receive a lot of books for this job. And so I'm constantly reading it. And yours is so refreshing and it's so honest. And it's not just your story and it's not just a framework with takeaways. It's like a beautiful combination of both. And I could tell that you absolutely put your heart and soul into this because it is your gift to the world. It is your gift to modern mothers everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Lib. Love you. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you can head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.